Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed the first video for 12 Realms showing the basic gameplay for 12 Realms, the game itself. Now in this video I'm going to concentrate 100% on the advanced rules, which crank up the difficulty quite a bit for the game and make the game much more enjoyable for adults because, like I already said in the other video, the basic rules are a little bit simpler in the challenge level and they're intentionally designed that way. Again, that's an intentional design decision. The game is designed to be easy with the basic rules so the game can be playable and enjoyable with the younger family members. If you want to play with the younger kids and you have younger kids, 5 to maybe 8 years old, you probably don't even need to pay attention to this video I'm shooting right here. If you want to play 12 Realms with the teenagers and the adults, this is the video for you. The really cool thing about all these extra rules for 12 Realms is they are all 100% modular, but they're all included to increase the difficulty for the game. And as a matter of fact, at the very end, I'm actually going to show you an additional variant what actually can make the game simpler. And that simpler variant you can actually throw in with the basic game, which makes the basic game extremely easy, but allows you to have it more of a family activity game because you're not going to be challenged by the game that much. But you can still get into the gameplay as the theme of the heroes defeating the Dark Lords who are trying to attack the realm with your younger kids. Every one of these additional rules is extremely modular. You can add them in steps, break them apart however you like, but every one of these additional add-ons is designed to make the game more challenging, more difficult, and something that you're going to get quite challenged by, especially when you throw in all the rules, including the Dark Player, which completely changes 12 Realms from a 100% cooperative game to a team-based game where all the players are playing heroes except for one single player who is controlling the Dark Lords and their attempt to overcome the realms and destroy them. So mix and match these add-ons as you like. They're going to increase the difficulty of the game, every single one of them, except the final one I'm going to show you at the end, which is going to start easing up on you because the very end, when you throw everything in, the game can be very, very challenging. So the last thing I'm going to throw in is the rules for the ends, which will start making the game a little bit less challenging for the heroes. Not to the point that it's easy, because you're going to see that once all the hard stuff is added in, this game can be very, very brutal. The first add-on for 12 Realms, we have that, again, this all comes with the very base box of the game, so this isn't stuff that you have to go out there and buy extra for, but this is the additional rules in the very basic set, and the very first thing that you can do to increase the difficulty of the game is the Black Fortresses. Now, every one of these Black Fortresses is going to start the game not in play, not in the realms, but these Black Fortresses are going to enter play based on the invasion track. You'll notice every one of these invasion boards on the number 7 has a picture of a black castle on it. If you look at every single one of them, it's always on the number 7, and that's when the Black Fortress is actually going to be built. As soon as this invasion track lands on 7 or lands past the number 7, what is going to happen is the Black Fortress is going to be built on a random realm based on the roll of the die. So you're going to roll the die, and that Black Fortress is going to go ahead and land in that realm, and it is now permanently part of that realm until it's destroyed. The only way to defeat or destroy a Black Fortress once it's been built is by exploiting either 3 swords for a large combat that involves storming the castle, much in the theme of The Princess Bride, or by exploiting 3 stars, which is magic, which means you launch a large magical assault at the castle to destroy this castle completely. And of course, crowns, being wild cards, can always stand in for any one of these. Basically, the Black Castle, in a way, is treated just like any creature that's invading the realm. And of course, evil invaders like nothing more than to have a nice castle to call their home while they're invading the realm. So the Black Castle is going to add one more level of difficulty to the game, because as soon as that Black Castle is built, any invaders that ever get added to that realm from now on, as long as that Black Castle is still in play, they're all instantly going to go to the same location as the Black Castle, which means that any cards that you flip over, you're not even going to bother to roll the location die. Any of these cards that you flip over, those invaders are immediately going to go to the exact same area where the Black Castle is already built. The additional difficulty on top of all of this is that any invaders that happen to be in the same area as the Black Castle are technically and thematically, they're inside the castle, which means these invaders cannot be defeated, period, until the Black Castle in that area has also been completely destroyed. So while the Black Castle doesn't count as an invader when it comes to the invasion track, all these invaders that are hiding in the castle do definitely count towards the invasion track. So if you have monsters starting to build up in your realm and you're not defeating that castle, that's going to guarantee this invasion track is going to start skyrocketing very quickly, increasing your challenge until you manage to defeat this Black Castle, because all these monsters are going to keep hiding in there, they're going to keep piling up in there as you keep adding more monsters to the board, and this invasion track is going to keep increasing exponentially, making the challenge much more difficult to save that realm. Luckily, the Black Fortress can only appear once, and once it is destroyed, it is removed from the game. You don't have to worry about it ever coming back into that current game. And then all future spawned invaders are going to go back to their normal spawn rules, which means they're going to enter the realm by the roll of the dice. But again, you have to be careful because you have all these invaders who may be left over from that castle you just destroyed. The good news, though, is at least the invaders aren't smart enough to hide treasures, and they're not smart enough to hide artifacts in the same realm that you currently happen to have the Black Castle. So if you do enter an area that does have treasures or does have artifacts, you don't have to attack the Black Fortress to get the artifacts or the treasures. But again, you do have to destroy that Black Fortress if you want to start taking out those invaders. The next thing to add into your game are the Petrified invaders. Now, Petrified invaders are what you throw in the game when you start feeling like the invaders are just not enough of a challenge for you to defeat, because you generally, for most of the basic invaders, only need one kind of talent to exploit to take them out. And if you're feeling like that's just not enough of a challenge for you, you can always add in the Petrified invaders. We're going to increase that difficulty quite a bit. And you can tell the difference between the Petrified invaders and normal invaders by the fact that the Petrified invaders look like they're made of stone because they're more of a black and white drawing versus a colored drawing. Now, the cards themselves look pretty much the same, except for the fact that these Petrified invaders take double the talents to defeat. So, for example, their standard gnome takes 1 sword or 1 combat and 1 heart or 1 courage to defeat, whereas the Petrified gnome, even though the card says the same thing, what you have to do is you have to double the talent requirements to defeat that petrified character or that creature. So to take out the Petrified gnome, you need 2 swords or 2 hearts, but you still get the reward of the gold if you defeat them, just like normal. To take out the sprite, it's 2 quickness or 2 courage to defeat, but you still get the gold if you defeat him at the end. And then finally, you have the goblin, who's going to take 2 swords, 2 courage, 2 gold, and he still has the power of the horde ability. Now, here's the quick trick you have to understand about these Petrified invaders. The Petrified invaders have the special powers such as the goblin and their horde ability, and the skeleton and their summon ability. Their special power is not going to bring in Petrified invaders with them. So when you bring in the Petrified goblin, you're going to add 1 Petrified goblin token to the board, and then you're going to look at their horde power, and that horde power is going to bring standard creatures of that type into play. And the same thing for the skeleton summon power. While the skeleton that comes into play is going to be a Petrified skeleton, he's going to summon standard skeletons onto the board to increase the difficulty of the game, just like a standard skeleton, except the skeleton who's petrified himself takes twice as many combat or twice as many magic to defeat, unlike the standard skeleton. And these petrified creatures are going to be added into the realm deck just like a standard game when you're playing. You're just simply going to shuffle them into the realm deck at the start of the game, and the petrified versions come up. You're going to use the petrified tokens. The standard ones come up. You're going to use the standard tokens for them. Or if you want to make it even more challenging, you're free to remove the standard versions of these creatures from the deck and just use the petrified versions only. Finally, for the ultimate challenge, we have the Dark Player rules. The Dark Player rules change 12 realms from a purely cooperative game to a team-based game where one player is going to be the Dark Player, controlling the invaders, controlling the Dark Overlords, and controlling just how things are going to happen, while all the other players are heroes trying to defeat the Dark Player. Setup for the Dark Player version of the game is going to be pretty much the same as a standard cooperative game, except the Dark Player is going to get access to 12 event cards. Now, there's 3 event cards for each single realm in the game, and you can only use the event cards based on the realms in the game, and you should be playing with all 4 realms when you're playing with these rules. If you're not, just simply pull out the event cards for the realm that's not currently active, the realm that's not currently in play. Anyways, what's going to happen is the Dark Player is going to shuffle all 12 of these realm cards together, and at the start of every single round, the Dark Player is going to draw 3 cards from this hand of event cards drawn randomly, and they're going to look at those 3 cards. They're going to pick 2, and the third one of the 3 cards they draw, they're going to return back to the draw deck, and you're going to reshuffle the draw deck to make sure you're randomizing exactly when these event cards are going to be coming into your hand. And then during your turn, you can play up to 2 of these cards per realm, based on exactly just how high the invasion track has happened to climb. And the way this is going to work is every one of these cards is going to have a number of 3, 6, or 9 on it, and that's going to go the same for every set of these realm cards. So even in the Fey Forest, we see there's a 9 card, a 6 card, and a 3 card. To get these cards into play, the invasion track has to be at that number or higher to get that invasion card into play. So the invasion track is currently set at 5, and we happen to have all 3 of the Fey cards in our hand as the dark player. The only invasion card we can play on our invasion turn would be the 3 card. But the invasion track happens to be 14, and we still have all 3 of these cards in our hand. We can play up to 2 of these during the invasion phase to make life much more difficult for our heroes. The dark player is also going to change exactly how the invasion phase is going to happen every single round, because the dark player gets to make all the decisions instead of using the randomness of the die. The dark player is going to decide exactly when you flip over the cards, and you're still going to flip over cards as normal, the amount of realms in play times 2 plus 1. The dark player is going to draw that many cards, and then they get to decide exactly where those invaders are going to land. Every time the invasion track gets to 7 or higher, the dark player gets to decide exactly where the castle, the black castle, is going to appear in that specific realm. The dark player gets to decide exactly where artifacts are going to show up in the realms, where the treasures are going to show up in the realms. The only rule is I have to respect, as the dark player, the rules for the affiliation, which means I can't put cards, creatures, invaders, or treasures from other realms in a realm that they're not currently affiliated with. So I can't add any of the cherry blossom cards into the fairy realm. I have to respect the affiliation, but beyond that, as a dark player, I get to choose where everything goes in every single realm. Finally, if you want to play 12 realms with everything that I've shown you, all the advanced rules, but you think it's a little bit too difficult and you want to simplify it, but you really like those extra rules, you can go ahead and start throwing in the buildings and the trade rules, which are going to give you some extra buildings you can start shopping at, which are going to give you some extra powers, making you a little bit more powerful versus this very difficult opposition. The building and trade rules add 3 more buildings that you can add to the realms, and you're going to place these out wherever you like, following a couple rules, and I'll get to those in a second. But basically, it's going to add an inn, a stable, and finally a bazaar, which are going to come with their own individual decks of cards, which you can use to make purchases from. When you set up the game board in the beginning of the game, you're allowed to put 1 of these buildings per realm in any one of the areas you like. So if you're happening to be playing a game with only 1 realm board, that does mean you have to pick which one of these 3 locations you're playing. If you're playing a 4 realm board, that does mean one of the realms is not going to get one of these 3 buildings. You're allowed to place 1 of these buildings per realm in any area you like. And then once you do that, if a player happens to visit one of those locations that one of those buildings currently happens to be at, they can spend 2 gold. Now notice, unlike the cities, which require you to spend 1 swiftness to actually enter the city, and then you get to make the purchase, when you enter one of these buildings, such as the bazaar or the stables or the inn, you simply spend 2 gold and you get to take the top card from the deck, sight unseen, and you get to add that to your character as a new permanent power that you get. There's 2 caveats here you have to understand about these cards. Once these cards are destroyed or removed because you happen to use their Aegis ability or something similar, they're not shuffled back into the deck. These are never discarded. Once these are used up, they are completely removed from the game. So while there's only 6 of these cards in each one of these decks, and they're fairly powerful, and they do all cost 2 gold and no swiftness, do understand that once you burn them, you're not going to get them back in that game. And that's the big difference between these buildings and shopping in the town. Remember, when you shop in town, you spend 1 swiftness to draw 2 cards and pick one of those 2 cards that you want to purchase for the cost that's listed on the upper right hand corner of the card. The difference here is with these buildings, you're not going to spend the swiftness, you're just going to spend 2 gold and take the top card from the deck, sight unseen, and you get to add that to your powers. And of course, if you burn the Aegis power on the card, if it happens to have an Aegis power, that card is permanently discarded and you're not going to get it back. It's permanently used up and gone. Finally, if you want even more challenge from 12 Realms, you can pick up the 12 Realms Ancestors Legacy expansion. Now, I don't have the official version of it. This is actually a print and play version of the game, so these aren't the final components for the 12 Realms Ancestors Legacy expansion. But the things the Ancestors Legacy expansion adds is a hidden betrayer rules, where one of the players randomly selected at the beginning of the game is actually a hidden betrayer seeking to gain victory for the Dark Overlords. There are also more powerful final Dark Overlords who are powerful enough to force you to start missing turns, invaders that are powerful enough to start destroying your special cards that you're purchasing at towns, invaders powerful enough that they can actually poison you, which means you're permanently going to lose access to one of your base talents until you manage to cure your poison, and even invaders that when you destroy them, they're going to give you extra talents to add to your characters. All these different expansions are basically mini expansions or mini thematic adventures for our heroes to go on. They all have their own little rules, but you mix and match these rules to make the game more challenging or even easier, more variety, more gameplay, which is the hallmark of 12 Realms. Hope you enjoyed this video. Going to clean everything up and set everything up so you can see exactly how 12 Realms plays with all the rules except for the Dark Player.